They say money is the root of all evil, but in my experience, it's just the water that makes buried secrets grow. I'm Diana Chen, 34, and until last month, I was the dutiful daughter who sent half her paycheck home every month to support her parents. Looking back, I should have seen the signs sooner, but love has a way of blinding you to the obvious. I'd always been the responsible one, working part-time jobs through college, taking out student loans so my younger brother Kevin could attend a private university debt-free. Your brother needs the best education possible, Mom would say. He's going to be a doctor. The fact that I was studying to be an engineer apparently didn't merit the same consideration. The monthly transfer started 5 years ago, right after I landed my dream job at a tech startup in San Francisco. The company had just gone public, and my salary jumped significantly. Mom called the day after the news made the local paper back home in Portland. "Diana, sweetie," she'd said, her voice carrying that particular tone I learned to dread since childhood. "Your father and I are having some difficulties with the mortgage." It started small, $2,000 a month to help with the house payment, then their car needed repairs. Dad's medical insurance didn't cover some new prescriptions. Mom's art gallery wasn't doing well due to the economy. Every month brought a new crisis, a new need, a new reason why they couldn't possibly manage without my help. Meanwhile, Kevin finished medical school and started his residency at a prestigious hospital in Boston. "Isn't it wonderful?" Mom would gush during our weekly video calls. "And he's dating the chief of surgery's daughter. Such a good match." No one seemed to notice or care that I was putting my own life on hold. The down payment I'd been saving for a house gradually dwindled. The promotion I wanted required additional certifications I couldn't afford to pursue. Dating became an afterthought. How could I plan a future when my present was mortgaged to my parents' needs? Then I met Stephen at a tech conference. Brilliant, kind, and surprisingly understanding about my financial situation. "Your devotion to your family is admirable," he said on our third date. "But don't you think it's time they learn to manage on their own?" I brushed off his concerns. They were my parents, after all. They'd sacrificed so much for us growing up. But his words planted a seed of doubt that grew stronger each time I had to say no to another opportunity, another dream, another step forward in my own life. The breaking point came last week. I'd finally saved enough for the certification program that could put me in line for the head engineer position. The same day I was planning to submit my application, Mom called in tears. "The gallery's in trouble," she sobbed. "We need $50,000 by the end of the month or we'll lose everything. You're our only hope, sweetheart. Your brother's still paying off his student loans, and you know how important the gallery is to me." I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at my laptop screen where the certification program application waited. 5 years of supporting them had already cost me over $150,000. The $50,000 in my savings was meant to finally be an investment in my own future. I can't, Mom," I said quietly. "Not this time." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Can't?" Her voice turned cold. "Or won't? After everything we've done for you? We gave up so much to give you and your brother a good life, and this is how you repay us." "Mom, I've been sending money home for 5 years. I need to think about my own future too." "Your future?" She laughed bitterly. "What about my future, my gallery? Do you know what people will say if we have to close? What it will do to our standing in the community? How can you be so selfish?" The word selfish hit me like a physical blow. How many times had I heard that growing up? Selfish for wanting new school supplies when Kevin needed sports equipment. Selfish for applying to out-of-state colleges when they needed me at home. Selfish for pursuing engineering instead of something more suitable for a girl. "I'm not being selfish," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'm being realistic. I need to know where all this money is going. You and Dad should be able to manage on your pensions and Social Security. The house is almost paid off. What's really going on?" "How dare you question us?" Mom's voice rose. "After everything we've sacrificed. Well, if you're going to be like this, don't bother calling until you've come to your senses, and don't expect us to support your choices anymore." She hung up before I could point out the irony of that last statement. That night, I couldn't sleep. Years of financial statements and excuses swirled in my mind. Stephen's words about enabling dependency echoed in my thoughts. Something wasn't adding up, but I couldn't see the full picture. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started digging. My parents' mortgage information was still in my files. I'd been making the payments directly for years. A call to the bank revealed something interesting. The mortgage payments I'd been sending weren't going to the home loan at all. That loan was paid off 2 years ago, Ms. Chen, the bank representative said. The payments are being directed to a different account. My hands shook as I requested more information. Using the power of attorney I'd been given for emergencies, I accessed their bank statements. What I found made my blood run cold. Regular transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Large withdrawals coinciding with Kevin's emergency requests for help with student loans. Loans that should have been covered by his hospital's repayment program. Payments to luxury retailers, high-end restaurants, flight bookings to Boston. Then I found the credit card statements. My parents, it seemed, had been living quite well on my support payments, designer clothes, art collecting trips, country club memberships, and most surprisingly, regular deposits into an investment account in Kevin's name. But the gallery receipts told the most interesting story. Mom's struggling business had actually been quite profitable for the past 3 years. The books showed healthy sales and substantial profits that were being systematically hidden and redirected. I was still staring at the statements when my phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? They've given you everything and now you're abandoning them? You've always been jealous of my success. You're ruining everything. Jealous of his success. The success built on my sacrificed dreams. I took a deep breath and typed back a single line. Check your trust fund statement lately, little brother. Then I called Stephen. Remember when you said it was time they learned to manage on their own? I said when he answered, I think it's actually time for something else. Time for the truth to come out. I spent the rest of the day making copies of everything I found. Bank statements, credit card bills, gallery records, investment accounts. The web of financial manipulation was breathtaking in its complexity. And in its betrayal. A message from Mom popped up on my phone. Your father and I are very disappointed in you. We raised you better than this. If you ever want to be part of this family again, you'll send the money by Friday. I looked at the certification program application still open on my laptop, then at the stack of financial records beside me. For the first time in years, I felt not guilt but anger. Clean, clarifying anger. You're right, Mom, I whispered to the screen. You did raise me better than this. Better than lies. Better than theft. Better than betrayal. I picked up my phone and made a call to the one person who could help me understand exactly what my parents had been doing with my money and how to make it stop. Hello, I said when the receptionist answered. I need to speak with someone about reporting financial fraud. The forensic accountant's office was cool and impersonal, much like the numbers she was showing me on her computer screen. Your parents have been running quite a sophisticated operation, Maria Delgado explained, scrolling through the documents I provided. The gallery was essentially a front for money laundering. Your support payments were being used to create the appearance of legitimate business income, while the actual gallery profits were being hidden to avoid taxes. I gripped the armrests of my chair, and the investment account in my brother's name? A trust fund, built primarily with your money and hidden gallery profits. Current balance just over $800,000. The room seemed to spin. Nearly $1 million while I lived in a tiny apartment and put my life on hold. What are my options? I asked, proud of how steady my voice remained. Maria leaned back in her chair. Given the evidence, you have several. You could report this to the IRS and FBI. This level of financial fraud and tax evasion would interest them greatly. You could pursue civil action to recover your money. Or you could confront your family with the evidence and try to resolve this privately. But given the systematic nature of their deception, I wouldn't recommend that route. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. The bank called about you accessing our accounts. How dare you spy on us? Your father is having chest pains from the stress you're causing. I hope you're happy. The familiar guilt rose up, but this time I recognized it for what it was. Another manipulation tool. I want it all. I said to Maria, civil and criminal, they need to face consequences. The next week was a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. I filed complaints with multiple agencies, documented every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. Stephen stayed by my side through all of it, offering support and righteous anger when my resolve wavered. Then came the letter from my parents' lawyer, threatening to sue me for defamation. I recognized the law firm name, the same one that handled Kevin's trust fund. They're bluffing, my lawyer assured me. They know we have documentation for everything. This is just an attempt to scare you into backing down. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. The confrontation happened at the gallery during one of Mom's prestigious artists and collectors' evenings. I walked in just as she was finishing her welcome speech to Portland's elite. And of course, she was saying we must support struggling local artists in these difficult economic times. Speaking of support, I said loudly, making her freeze mid-gesture. Let's talk about how you've been supporting my brother's secret trust fund with my money. The elegant crowd turned to stare. Mom's face went pale. Diana, this isn't the time or place. Actually, it's exactly the right time and place. I pulled out copies of the financial records. You've been using this gallery to launder money, using my support payments to create fake income while hiding the real profits. Shall we discuss the tax implications of that? Security, Mom called out, but I noticed none of the staff moved. They've all been served with subpoenas, I informed her. They'll be testifying about the gallery's real income versus what's been reported. Just like the bank records will show where my money really went. Not to your mortgage, which was paid off years ago, but to Kevin's trust fund and your luxury shopping. You ungrateful little, she started, but Dad's hand on her arm stopped her. Diana, he said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that used to make me crumble. You're making serious accusations. Think very carefully about what you're doing to this family. Family? I laughed. A family doesn't steal from their daughter while privileging their son. A family doesn't manipulate and lie and commit fraud. A family doesn't what? Kevin's voice rang out as he pushed through the crowd. Doesn't take care of their own? Mom and Dad knew I'd need capital to start my own practice. They were just planning for my future. With my money, I turned to face the gathered crowd. Let me tell you all a story about family, about parents who took half their daughter's income for years, claiming poverty while living in luxury. About a brother who knew his trust fund was being built with his sister's sacrificed dreams. About a struggling gallery that's actually been profitable for years, but the profits were being hidden to avoid taxes. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Several prominent collectors began edging toward the door. The IRS and FBI have been notified, I continued. They're very interested in the gallery's creative bookkeeping. And I filed civil suits to recover every penny that was stolen from me. You'll destroy us, Mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. No, I corrected her. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just exposing the truth. The aftermath was both better and worse than I expected. The gallery was seized as evidence. Mom and Dad were charged with multiple counts of tax evasion and fraud. Kevin's trust fund was frozen pending investigation. The family I'd known, or thought I knew, imploded. Mom alternated between tearful pleas for forgiveness and vicious accusations of betrayal. Dad retreated into stony silence. Kevin raged about his ruined plans as if he had any right to plans built on my stolen money. But something unexpected happened too. Other voices began reaching out. Cousins who'd seen through my parents' facade years ago, but hadn't known how to tell me. Former gallery employees with stories of being forced to participate in the deception. Even some of Mom's society friends admitting they'd suspected something wasn't right but had kept quiet to maintain social harmony. 6 months later, I sat in my new office at work, looking at my professional engineering certification on the wall. The promotion had come through, along with a significant raise. Stephen and I had just put a deposit down on a condo, my first real investment in my own future. Mom and Dad took a plea deal to avoid longer sentences. They'll serve some time, though not as much as they probably deserve. The restitution payments will take years, but I'm less interested in recovering the money than in maintaining the boundaries I've finally learned to set. Kevin lost his position at the prestigious hospital when a scandal broke. Last I heard, he was working at a small practice in rural Maine, learning for the first time what it means to actually earn his way. Yesterday, I received a letter from Mom in prison. I know we hurt you, she wrote, but we're still family. Someday, when you have children of your own, you'll understand that parents just want what's best for their children. I wrote back one line. That's exactly why I'll never treat my children the way you treated me. The gallery building is for sale now. I drive past it sometimes, remembering all the lies that were sold there along with the art. The for sale sign seems like a metaphor. Everything has its price, but the true cost isn't always measured in dollars. Stephen suggested we should buy it, turn it into something positive. Maybe a community art space or education center. Transform the scene of the crime, he said with a smile. I'm considering it. There would be a certain poetry in turning a place of deception into a space for truth and growth. But first, I'm focusing on transforming myself. From the dutiful daughter who enabled financial abuse into a woman who knows her worth can't be measured by her bank account. The forensic accountant's final report sits in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out and read it, not to relive the pain, but to remind myself that clarity comes at a cost, and some prices are worth paying. They say money is the root of all evil, but I've learned it's really just a mirror, reflecting who we truly are. My parents saw it as a tool for control and manipulation. My brother saw it as his birthright, but I finally learned to see it for what it is, just a resource, neither good nor evil, useful only in service of our true values. Last week, I started a support group for adult children of financially abusive parents. The stories I hear echo my own, the guilt, the manipulation, the slow erosion of self-worth. But there's hope too, in sharing our experiences and learning to set boundaries. Mom's gallery used to have a sign. Art is truth seen through a lie. How fitting that their biggest lie, their carefully constructed facade of parental sacrifice and family unity, ultimately revealed the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need to become who you're meant to be. I'm building a new family now, one based on honesty and mutual respect. Stephen and I are talking about marriage, about children, about creating the kind of home where love doesn't come with a price tag and support doesn't mean surrender. The money they stole can be replaced. The dreams they delayed can be pursued. But the truth they tried to hide? That's priceless. And it's mine to keep. I used your college fund for my dream house. Amanda's voice dripped with satisfaction through my phone speaker. You're never going back to finish your degree anyway. Time to grow up and face reality. I gripped my kitchen counter, feeling the cool marble under my fingers as I processed her words. The $800,000 education fund my grandparents had left me, gone. Or so she thought. Interesting. I replied, my voice steady. And how exactly did you manage that? My name is Sophie Parker, and at 32, I'd spent the last decade working as an accountant while slowly building my way toward my dream of finishing my medical degree. What my sister-in-law, Amanda, didn't know was that I'd been expecting this move ever since she married my brother James 3 months ago. Oh, it was easy, she laughed, clearly disappointed by my calm reaction. James still had access to the account from when your grandparents first set it up. All I needed was his signature. The house is gorgeous, by the way. Much better use of the money than some silly dream of becoming a doctor. I could picture her smug expression, probably admiring her reflection in one of her oversized designer mirrors. Amanda had swept into our lives like a hurricane 6 months ago, convincing my brother she was his soulmate after just 2 weeks of dating. I'd seen right through her act, but James was too enchanted to listen. Well, thanks for letting me know, I said, opening my laptop. I hope you enjoy the house. That's it. Amanda's voice rose with frustration. No crying. No begging. Come on, Sophie, where's the drama? I ended the call without responding and pulled up my email. There it was, the confirmation I'd been waiting for from my attorney. The transfer Amanda and James had attempted had been blocked. The funds already moved to a new, secure account 2 weeks ago. My grandmother had always said, trust your instincts, but verify your accounts. She'd built her own accounting firm from nothing, teaching me everything she knew about protecting assets before she passed. When Amanda started asking suspiciously detailed questions about my college fund at Sunday dinners, I knew it was time to put those lessons to use. I dialed my attorney's number, my hand steady despite the anger still simmering beneath the surface. Hi, Linda. I just got the call we were expecting. Has everything been documented? Every attempt they made to access the account has been recorded. Linda confirmed. The timestamps, the forged documents, everything. Your brother's signature appears to have been coerced. Do you want to proceed with pressing charges? I thought about James, my sweet but naive older brother. He'd always protected me growing up, standing up to bullies and helping me through our parents' messy divorce. Now he was married to someone who made those school-year bullies look like amateurs. Not yet. I replied, let's wait for them to realize the transfer failed. I want to see what Amanda does next. After hanging up, I walked to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside was a thick folder labeled Grandma's Letters. I pulled out the most recent one, written just weeks before she passed away 2 years ago. My dearest Sophie, it read, I'm leaving you this money because I believed in your dream. Medicine isn't just a career for you, it's a calling. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late or too hard. And most importantly, don't let anyone take this opportunity from you. You're smarter than they think. Love, Grandma. I traced her signature with my finger, remembering how she taught me to analyze handwriting patterns when I was just 12. That knowledge had helped me spot the inconsistencies in James's signature on the transfer documents Amanda had submitted. My phone buzzed again. A text from James. Hey sis, Amanda's really excited about the house we're buying. I know the money was for your school, but you've got a good job already. Family should help family, right? I felt a familiar ache in my chest. James had always been terrible with money, jumping from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. Amanda had clearly figured that out within days of meeting him. Another text came through. The realtor needs the money by Friday. You're not mad, are you? I started typing a response, then deleted it. Let them figure out on their own that their plan had failed. Sometimes silence was the best reply. My computer pinged with an email notification. The medical school admissions office confirming my interview for next week. I'd already been quietly completing prerequisites at night while working full-time. The money from my grandparents wasn't just sitting in an account. It was an investment in my future, one I've been carefully planning for years. I opened my blinds, looking out at the city skyline as the sun set. Amanda thought she had won. That she'd crushed my dreams with a few forged signatures and a smug phone call. She had no idea that she'd just walked into a trap of her own making. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people think they've beaten you, right up until the moment they realize they've beaten themselves. Friday was only 3 days away. I wondered what excuse Amanda would give the realtor when the money didn't appear in her account. More importantly, I wondered how she would explain to James why she tried to steal from his sister. I picked up my phone and texted Linda, "Send me everything you've documented. I want to be ready when this all falls apart." Then I turned back to my medical school application, a small smile playing at my lips. Amanda thought she was destroying my dream. Instead, she was about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating the quiet ones in the family. Friday morning arrived with a storm of text messages from Amanda. The bank says the transfer failed. What did you do? You think you're so clever, don't you? James is devastated. How could you do this to your own brother? I sipped my coffee, reviewing the documented evidence Linda had sent over. Everything was there. Amanda's multiple attempts to access the account, the forged signatures, even recordings of her calls to the bank where she tried to impersonate me. My phone rang. James. Sophie, we need to talk. His voice was tight with anxiety. Amanda says there's some kind of problem with the transfer. There is, I replied calmly. Would you like to know what really happened, or do you want to keep pretending your wife didn't just try to steal my education fund? Silence on the other end. Then it wasn't stealing. I signed the papers. We're family. Did you actually sign them, James? Or did Amanda forge your signature after showing you different documents? More silence. I could almost hear the pieces clicking into place in his mind. Come over, he said finally. Please, I need to understand what's going on. An hour later, I sat in her living room, my laptop open to display the evidence. Amanda paced behind the couch, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors she'd insisted they install last month. As you can see, I explained, pulling up the forged documents, these signatures don't match your usual handwriting, James. The bank's fraud department spotted it immediately. You had no right to move that money. Amanda burst out. It was just sitting there while you play pretend about medical school. We needed it. Needed it? I raised an eyebrow. For what? A 5-bedroom house you can't afford? More designer clothes? Or was it to cover the gambling debts you've been hiding from James? Her face went pale. James turned to stare at her. What gambling debts? I pulled up another document, a credit report Linda had obtained during our investigation. Your wife has been busy, James. 3 maxed-out credit cards, 2 personal loans, and regular withdrawals at the Golden Palace Casino. Did you wonder why she was so interested in accessing my college fund? Amanda's composure cracked. You had no right to look into my finances. Actually, I had every right. You tried to steal my money. Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself? That I wouldn't notice when you started asking questions about my account details?" James sat heavily on the couch, his face ashen. "Amanda, is this true? The gambling." "It's not what you think," she stammered. "I had a system. I was going to win it all back. The house was going to fix everything. We could have remortgaged it when we needed to." I watched my brother's world crumble around him. Part of me wanted to comfort him, but he needed to see the truth for himself. "How much?" he asked quietly. "What? How much do you owe?" Amanda's silence was damning. "Over $200,000, I answered for her. And that's just what we've been able to trace." James put his head in his hands. I could see his shoulders shaking. "Get out," he whispered. "Baby, please," Amanda started. "Get out," James roared, standing up. "You tried to steal from my sister. You forged my signature. You've been gambling away our savings. Get out." Amanda grabbed her purse, mascara running down her face. "Fine, but don't think this is over. I'll find a way to fix this." The door slammed behind her. James collapsed back onto the couch. "I'm so sorry, Sophie," he whispered. "I should have listened when you said something felt off about her. I wanted to believe someone could love me that much that quickly." I moved to sit beside him, pulling out an envelope from my bag. "Here," I said softly. "You'll need this." "What is it?" "Contact information for a good divorce lawyer. Linda recommended her. And proof that Amanda has been planning this from the beginning." James looked through the papers, his face growing harder with each page. Text messages showing Amanda bragging to friends about marrying into a family with money. Bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Casino receipts dating back to before their wedding. "She never loved me, did she?" he asked, his voice small. "No," I replied gently. "But that's not a reflection on you. She's a con artist, James. She's done this before." His head snapped up. "What?" I pulled out the final document, a police report from 3 years ago. Another marriage, another theft, another devastated family. She disappeared before they could press charges, I explained. Changed her name and moved here. Started fresh with a new target. James was quiet for a long time, processing everything. Finally, he looked at me. "The college fund, it's safe." I nodded. "Grandma taught me well. The money was moved to a secure account weeks ago. Amanda's transfer attempts were blocked and documented. We have everything we need to press charges." "Do it," he said firmly. "Press charges. All of it. I'll testify, provide whatever you need. She needs to be stopped." I hugged my brother, feeling him shake with suppressed sobs. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "I'm supposed to protect you, not put you in danger." "Hey," I pulled back to look at him. "You protected me plenty when we were kids. Let me protect you this time." My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. The police were ready to move on our evidence. Amanda's previous victims had been contacted and were willing to testify. "What happens now?" James asked. "Now," I replied, "we make sure Amanda can't do this to anyone else. And then, I have a medical school interview to prepare for." For the first time that day, James smiled. "You're really going to do it? Become a doctor?" "That's what the money was for. That's what Grandma wanted." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "She'd be proud of you, not just for catching Amanda, but for never giving up on your dream." I squeezed his hand. "She'd be proud of you too for being brave enough to face the truth." Outside, thunder rumbled as the sky darkened. Somewhere in the city, Amanda was probably trying to figure out her next move, unaware that her game was finally over. But here, in this moment, something broken was beginning to heal. 2 months later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my white coat. My medical school interview had gone perfectly, just as my preparation with the secured funds had allowed. But today wasn't about my future as a doctor. Today was about justice. "Ready?" James asked from the doorway. He looked better now, the shadows under his eyes finally fading. The divorce papers had been filed the day after Amanda's schemes came to light. "Ready," I confirmed, grabbing my bag. The courthouse was packed, but not just with us. 3 other families were there, Amanda's previous victims. She used different names each time. Amanda Wilson, Amy Walker, Anna Wells. But her strategy had always been the same. Marry quickly, locate assets, forge documents, drain accounts. You don't have to do this, I told James as we took our seats. Linda can present the evidence without your testimony. He shook his head. No, I need to face her. We all do. Amanda was led in by officers, her designer clothes replaced by generic court attire. She'd been arrested at the airport 3 weeks ago, attempting to flee with a fake passport. The smug smile I remembered from her phone call was gone, replaced by a look of desperate calculation. Her eyes widened when she saw the other families. This wasn't part of her plan. The proceedings moved quickly. Linda presented our evidence methodically, the forged signatures, the gambling debts, the pattern of fraud across multiple states. Each family stood to testify, sharing nearly identical stories of trust betrayed and lives nearly ruined. When it was James's turn, his voice was steady. She made me believe I'd found true love, he said. Instead, I nearly helped her steal my sister's future. The money she tried to take wasn't just cash in an account. It was a grandmother's legacy, a dream of becoming a doctor, a future of helping others. Amanda doesn't just steal money, she steals hope. I squeezed his hand as he returned to his seat. Finally, it was my turn. Unlike Amanda's other victims, I was fortunate. I began. My grandmother taught me to protect myself, to trust my instincts, to document everything. The money she left me wasn't just for education. It was a lesson in standing up for what's right. Today isn't about revenge. It's about making sure Amanda can't destroy any more families. The judge's verdict was decisive. Guilty on all counts. 5 years in prison, restitution to all victims, no possibility of early release. You think this changes anything? Amanda spat as they led her away. You're still just playing at being a doctor. You'll fail and I'll be out before you finish your first year. I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's words about letting people think they've won. Actually, I replied calmly, I start medical school next month. Your attempt to steal my dream just motivated me to work harder. So thank you, Amanda. You taught me that sometimes the best revenge is succeeding despite those who tried to stop you. Outside the courthouse, James turned to me. I found her ring, he said. The engagement ring I spent 3 months' salary on. It's fake, just like everything else about her. Sell it, I suggested. Use the money to start fresh. He shook his head, pulling out the ring. No, I want you to have it. Sell it and add it to your school fund. Turn one more piece of your lies into something good. That evening, I sat in my office, looking at my grandmother's photo. The acceptance letter from medical school lay on my desk, along with the latest statement from my secured education fund. My phone buzzed, a text from James. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I couldn't see the truth. I smiled, thinking about how different things could have been if I hadn't listened to my grandmother's lessons about protecting myself. Amanda had thought she was taking advantage of a naive dreamer, too busy studying to notice her schemes. Instead, she'd encountered someone prepared, protected, and unwilling to let anyone steal her future. I picked up my white coat, running my fingers over the embroidered name. Sophie Parker, medical student. Sometimes the best victories aren't just about keeping what's yours. They're about showing others that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to pursue your dreams, to trust your instincts. And as for Amanda, she'd have 5 years to think about the fact that the quiet one she'd underestimated was now on her way to becoming Dr. Parker. While she sat in a cell, her own dreams of easy money finally permanently out of reach. No marriage registration means you have no rights, Marcus smirked, lounging on our leather couch with an air of superiority that made my skin crawl. Jessica and I have discussed it, and she'll be moving in next week. You can take the guest room or leave, your choice. I stood in our living room, my living room, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. At 34, I never imagined my husband of 8 years would be sitting there, casually telling me his 23-year-old girlfriend was replacing me in my own home. You really think it's that simple? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. No marriage certificate means I just disappear. He laughed, that condescending sound I'd grown to hate over the past year. Exactly. I checked with my lawyer. Without official registration, you're just someone who's been living here. Jessica and I are starting fresh, and legally, you can't stop us. I set my mug down carefully on the coffee table, the same table I picked out when we first moved in. Marcus had insisted we didn't need to register our marriage back then. Why waste money on paperwork? He'd said. We know we're committed to each other. Now I understood the real reason. When does Jessica arrive? I asked, walking toward my home office. Next Tuesday, he replied, clearly pleased with my apparent acceptance. She's bringing her designer furniture. This place needs a younger woman's touch. I closed my office door behind me, my hands trembling as I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside lay a manila envelope I put there 3 years ago, when I first suspected Marcus was hiding something. I'd hired a private investigator then, not to follow Marcus, but to look into our property records. The PI had discovered something interesting. Marcus hadn't actually bought this house as he claimed. His uncle had left it to him in a will. But there was a crucial detail Marcus either didn't know or had forgotten. I pulled out the document and read the words I'd memorized long ago. Property to be held in trust until marriage is legally registered. There was more about how the house would revert to other beneficiaries if certain conditions weren't met. But that first line was all that mattered now. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica herself. Can't wait to redecorate. Hope you're not too heartbroken. I smiled for the first time that day. Marcus had been so focused on using the lack of marriage registration against me. He'd never bothered to read his uncle's will properly. The house wasn't his to give away, and Tuesday was going to be very interesting. Walking back to the living room, I found Marcus on the phone, probably with Jessica, discussing their plans for my home. He looked up as I approached, his expression smug. One question, I said, holding the envelope behind my back. Did you ever actually read your Uncle Robert's will? The full version, I mean. His brow furrowed slightly. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, actually. I pulled out the document and held it up. Because according to this, you don't own this house. Not legally, not until you register a marriage, and since you never did. The color drained from his face as I placed the document on the coffee table. That's impossible, he whispered, reaching for the papers with shaking hands. Your uncle was old-fashioned. I continued, enjoying the way Marcus's confidence crumbled with each word. He believed in doing things properly. Marriage, registration, all of it. Without that, the house belongs to the trust. And guess who I spoke to last week? Marcus looked up at me, realization dawning in his eyes. You didn't. The trustees were very interested to learn about your situation. They'll be here Tuesday too. Perfect timing. Don't you think the next few days were a masterclass in watching someone unravel? Marcus spent hours on the phone with his lawyer, his voice growing increasingly desperate as he realized the trap he'd laid for me had snapped shut around him instead. There has to be a way around this, he hissed into his phone, pacing our kitchen. I've been living here for 10 years. I sat at the breakfast bar, calmly sipping my morning coffee. 8 years, I corrected. You rented before that, remember? He shot me a venomous look. This is all your fault. You went behind my back, dug up private family documents. Public records, actually, I cut in. Your uncle's will is filed with the county. Anyone can look it up. I just did my homework. His phone buzzed again. Probably Jessica. She'd been texting constantly since yesterday, demanding updates. Their perfect plan was falling apart, and she wasn't taking it well. Jessica's already given notice on her apartment, Marcus said, trying a different approach. His voice softened, attempting the charm that used to work on me. Be reasonable. We can figure something out, split the value maybe. I raised an eyebrow. Split what value? You don't own anything to split. The trustees were very clear. Without a legally registered marriage, you're just a tenant who's been living here rent-free. The doorbell rang, making Marcus jump. I checked my watch. Right on time. That'll be Mr. Patterson from the trust, I said, standing up. He wanted to do a preliminary inspection before Tuesday. Marcus grabbed my arm as I passed. Wait. We can fix this. We could register our marriage now quickly. I gently removed his hand. You already announced your intentions to move your girlfriend in. Pretty sure that violates the spirit of the marriage requirement. I walked to the door, leaving him standing there, face ashen. Mr. Patterson was exactly as I remembered from our meeting last week, elderly, impeccably dressed, and radiating no-nonsense efficiency. Mrs. Walker, he greeted me formally, using my maiden name. Everything in order. Come in, I said, leading him to the living room where Marcus stood frozen. Mr. Patterson, This is Marcus. Marcus, this is your uncle's estate trustee. The look Mr. Patterson gave Marcus could have frosted glass. Ah yes, the nephew who thought he could circumvent his uncle's wishes. He pulled out a folder. I've brought the relevant documents. Your uncle was quite specific about his expectations for this property. Marcus sank onto the couch, all pretense of control evaporating. Uncle Robert wanted me to have this house. He told me. He wanted you to have a proper marriage and family here, Mr. Patterson corrected, not to use it as a bachelor pad while playing house with various young ladies. I bit back a smile at Marcus's expression. Mr. Patterson had done his research thoroughly. The trust position is clear, he continued, laying out papers on the coffee table. You had 8 years to fulfill the conditions of inheritance. You chose not to. Therefore, the property reverts to the trust's control. Marcus's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then quickly looked away. I caught a glimpse of Jessica's message. The movers are all booked. Can't wait. How long do I have? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. The trust requires vacant possession by next Friday. Mr. Patterson replied. That's 10 days to make alternative arrangements. He turned to me. Mrs. Walker, given the circumstances, the trust is prepared to offer you a short-term lease at a favorable rate, should you wish to stay. I smiled, thinking of the apartment I'd already viewed. Thank you, but I have other plans. Marcus's head snapped up. You knew this was coming. You've been planning this. Unlike you, I said quietly, I believe in being prepared. After Mr. Patterson left, Marcus sat in silence for a long time, staring at nothing. Finally, he looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. When did you figure it out? He asked. About the house. 3 years ago. About Jessica. Last year, when you started pushing back against registering our marriage. You got sloppy with your texts. He nodded slowly. And he waited all this time? I waited until you showed me exactly who you are, I replied. Until you tried to use the lack of registration against me. Karma's interesting that way. Tuesday arrived with all the drama I expected. I was in the kitchen, packing the last of my cookware, when I heard the commotion outside. Jessica had arrived with her moving truck, right on schedule. What do you mean we can't move in? Her shrill voice carried through the open window. Marcus, you promised me this house. I walked to the front door just in time to see Mr. Patterson and 2 other trustees intercepting Jessica and her movers. Marcus stood to the side, looking like he wanted to disappear into the perfectly manicured lawn he'd always been so proud of. Miss, Mr. Patterson was saying, his tone clipped, this property is under trust management. No unauthorized occupancy will be permitted. Jessica turned to Marcus, her perfectly made-up face contorting with rage. You said this was handled. You said your wife had no rights. Technically, I called out from the doorway, he was right about that part. I don't have any rights to the house. I smiled sweetly. But neither does he. The moving truck driver was already backing out of the driveway, clearly wanting no part of this situation. Jessica's designer furniture would have to find another home. This is ridiculous. Jessica stamped her foot, looking every bit the 23-year-old she was. I gave up my apartment. I bought new furniture. Marcus, do something. But Marcus just stood there, defeated. He'd spent the last week frantically searching for loopholes, calling in favors from lawyer friends, even trying to contact other family members who might influence the trust. Nothing had worked. The trust position is final, Mr. Patterson stated firmly. The property must be vacated by Friday. Any attempts to occupy it without authorization will result in legal action. Jessica's face crumpled as reality finally sank in. But where am I supposed to go? That's not our concern, Mr. Patterson replied. Turning to me, his expression softened slightly. Mrs. Walker, I trust you'll be finished moving out by tomorrow. I nodded. Everything's almost packed. The lease on my new apartment starts today. Marcus's head snapped up. You've already found a place. Like I said, I replied, I believe in being prepared. Later that evening, as I packed the last of my personal belongings, Marcus made one final attempt to talk. We could still fix this, he said, hovering in the doorway of what had been our bedroom. Register the marriage, make it official. We could have the house back. I closed my suitcase and turned to face him. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the house. It was about respect, about building a life with someone who values you. You failed at both. What about Jessica? He asked quietly. What about her? You promised her something you didn't own, just like you promised me a marriage you never intended to honor. He had no response to that. The next morning, I handed my keys to Mr. Patterson. My new apartment was smaller but bright and airy, with a balcony perfect for the herb garden I'd always wanted to start. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed with a message from my friend Deanne. Just drove by the house. Jessica's furniture is sitting in Marcus's parents' driveway. His mom looks furious. I smiled, imagining the scene. Marcus had always relied on his parents bailing him out of trouble. But a house full of modern furniture and an angry girlfriend might be beyond even their capacity for cleanup. A week later, I ran to Jessica at a local cafe. She was alone, stirring her coffee absently. He's living in his parents' garage, she said when she saw me. Claims he's between properties right now. She laughed bitterly. I should have known when he wouldn't make anything official with me either. Some lessons are expensive, I replied, grabbing my to-go order. But they're worth learning. 3 months later, I received a formal letter from the trust. They had sold the house to a young couple who, ironically, had just registered their marriage. Mr. Patterson included a personal note. Your ex-husband tried to contest the sale. The judge laughed him out of court. Standing on my balcony that evening, tending to my flourishing herb garden, I felt nothing but peace. Marcus had tried to use the lack of marriage registration against me, thinking it left me powerless. Instead, it had revealed exactly who we both were. Him, a man trying to cheat the system, and me, someone strong enough to walk away and build something better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about showing someone that their attempt to take advantage of you becomes the very thing that sets you free. Look at these. Patricia slammed the photos on our kitchen table, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the glossy prints. Your precious wife isn't who you think she is, Marcus. I stood frozen, watching my husband of 8 years pick up the photographs with trembling hands. Each image showed me apparently meeting a man at various locations. Outside a hotel, at a restaurant, in a parking lot. The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough to suggest intimacy. Except I had never been to any of those places. Emma? Marcus's voice cracked as he looked up at me, his face pale. What is this? Those are fake, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Your mother fabricated them. Patricia gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. How dare you accuse me? I'm only trying to protect my son from a cheating wife. I might have believed her performance if I hadn't been recording every interaction with my mother-in-law for the past 6 months. The tiny pendant around my neck wasn't just jewelry. It was a high-quality recording device, capturing every scheme and manipulation Patricia had orchestrated since she moved in with us temporarily after her supposed house flooding. Marcus, think about it, I pleaded. When would I have time for an affair? I work from home, we share our location with each other, and the timestamps on these photos go back months. He cut me off, his voice rising. All those late nights you said you were working. Were you with him? I felt a familiar ache in my chest. For years, Patricia had been poisoning Marcus's mind against me, planting seeds of doubt, making subtle comments about my trustworthiness. I'd started recording everything because I knew someday she'd make her big move. I just hadn't expected her to go this far. This explains everything, Patricia pressed, putting an arm around Marcus. Why she's been so distant, why she always finds excuses not to give you children. She's been unfaithful all along. The truth was, we'd been trying for a baby for 2 years. The fertility treatments have been expensive and emotionally draining. But I kept them private at Marcus's request. He didn't want his mother knowing about our struggles. I'm not cheating, I stated firmly. Those photos are doctored. Patricia, would you like to tell Marcus about your meeting with James at the coffee shop last week? Her face flickered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus, she's clearly trying to deflect. I can't do this, Marcus interrupted, standing up abruptly. I need to think. He grabbed his keys and stormed out, leaving me alone with Patricia. Her sympathetic mask dropped instantly, replaced by a cold smile. He'll be moving in with Jessica from his office, she said smugly. You know, the young receptionist he's been seeing for the past 3 months. I've been helping them find an apartment. The revelation should have shocked me, but somehow it didn't. I'd noticed the signs, the late nights, the hidden phone calls, the sudden password changes on his devices. But I'd been so focused on documenting Patricia's manipulation that I'd underestimated her ultimate plan. You knew about his affair all along, I said, the pieces clicking into place. You've been covering for him. Of course I have. Jessica is much better suited for my son. Young, fertile, and most importantly, not you. Patricia gathered the photos, tucking them into her designer handbag. Marcus won't file for divorce, of course. That would mean splitting assets, and we can't have that. You'll just have to accept that your marriage is over. I watched her sashay out of the kitchen, her victory seemingly complete. She had no idea that every word she just said was recorded, along with hundreds of hours of similar conversations over the past months. But I wasn't ready to reveal that yet. Later that evening, Marcus returned briefly to pack a bag. I'm staying with Jessica for a while, he announced, avoiding my eyes. Mother's right, we don't need lawyers involved. I'll keep paying the mortgage, but I need space. I sat quietly at the kitchen table, watching him gather his things. Just like that. 8 years of marriage and you're choosing to believe doctored photos over me? He paused at the door, his back to me. The photos just confirmed what Mother's been saying all along. You've never really fit into this family. After he left, I went to my home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was an external hard drive containing months of recorded conversations, security camera footage, and emails. A digital record of every manipulation, every lie, every scheme Patricia had orchestrated. I plugged in the hard drive and opened a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were recordings of Patricia bragging to her friend about hiring someone to create the fake photos, discussions with Jessica about how to help Marcus avoid divorce proceedings, and countless conversations where she detailed her plans to drive me out of Marcus's life. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. I expect you'll be moving out soon. The house belongs to the family after all. I smiled, thinking of the USB drive in my pendant and the backup copies I'd stored in 3 different locations. Patricia thought she'd won, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail about me. I'd learned from the best. My own mother had been a private investigator, and she taught me the importance of always being prepared. Everything in its own time, I texted back, knowing it would drive her crazy not to get an emotional response. I had all the evidence I needed. Now it was just a matter of timing. The next few weeks played out exactly as I'd expected. Marcus divided his time between Jessica's apartment and his mother's house, while Patricia took every opportunity to flaunt her victory. She dropped by the house unannounced, supposedly to check on things, but really to remind me of my impending defeat. Jessica's redecorating their new apartment, she announced one afternoon, uninvited in my kitchen. She has such wonderful taste, and she's young enough to give Marcus children. Naturally, of course. I kept my face neutral as my pendant recorded every word. How interesting. Would you like to tell me more about how you helped them find that apartment? Patricia's smile faltered slightly. She wasn't used to my calm responses, no tears, no anger, no begging Marcus to come back. It made her nervous, though she tried not to show it. I don't know what you're implying, she said, adjusting her expensive scarf. I merely want what's best for my son. Of course you do. Like when you hired James to Photoshop those pictures. The coffee cup in her hand trembled slightly. You can't prove anything. I smiled, saying nothing. Let her worry. That evening, Marcus came by to collect more clothes. He looked tired, the initial excitement of his new freedom clearly wearing thin. Mother says you're being difficult about moving out, he said, stuffing shirts into a duffel bag. Is that what she says? I kept my voice level. What else does she tell you about me? He paused, uncertainty flickering across his face. Look, I know the situation isn't ideal, but… Isn't ideal? I interrupted. You're living with your mistress while your mother orchestrates the destruction of our marriage, and you won't even consider the possibility that those photos were fake. I saw you with him, Marcus snapped. In those pictures. Pictures can lie, I said quietly. Just like mothers can lie. Just like husbands can lie about working late when they're really with their receptionists. He had the grace to look ashamed, but his mother's influence ran deep. You're just trying to turn this around on me. Mother warned me you'd do this. I watched him leave, knowing it was almost time to make my move. The next morning, I received a text from Jessica of all people. Your NIL says you're being stubborn about the house. Why don't you just leave with dignity? I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file. An hour later, Patricia called. I've been patient, she said, her voice sickly sweet. But it's time for you to accept reality. Marcus and Jessica are building a life together. You need to move on. You're right, I replied. Things do need to move forward. Finally, I'll help you find a nice apartment. Actually, I cut her off. I was thinking more about moving forward with my evidence file. There was a long pause. What evidence file? Oh, recordings, security footage, emails. It's amazing what people will say when they think no one's listening. Like discussions about hiring someone to create fake photos, or plans to help your son avoid divorce proceedings. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're bluffing, she finally managed. Would you like me to quote your exact words from last Tuesday, when you were telling your friend Helen about how you orchestrated this whole situation? I heard her sharp intake of breath. What do you want? I want you to tell Marcus the truth, about the photos, about how you've been manipulating him, about everything. You have until tomorrow evening. And if I don't, then the evidence goes to Marcus, your church committee, and your precious country club friends. I wonder what they think about you helping your son commit adultery and financial fraud. She hung up without another word. I spent that evening organizing my files, making sure every piece of evidence was properly labeled and backed up. The recordings were damning. Patricia discussing her plans in detail, coaching Jessica on how to seduce Marcus, bragging about having the photos doctored. There were even conversations with Marcus where she systematically poisoned him against me, twisting every innocent interaction into something suspicious. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from Marcus. Mother's acting strange. Says she needs to talk to both of us tomorrow. What's going on? I replied simply, I guess we'll find out. Another message popped up, this one from Patricia. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I looked at my wedding photos still hanging on the wall, remembering the woman I used to be, eager to please, desperate for Patricia's approval. Always giving Marcus the benefit of the doubt. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. Tomorrow would change everything, but for now, I slept soundly, knowing I held all the cards. Patricia's web of lies was about to unravel, and I had front row seats to the show. The truth would come out, one way or another. I just hoped Marcus was ready to face it. The next evening, our kitchen became a battleground. Marcus sat at the table, looking confused and wary. Patricia perched on the edge of her chair like she might bolt at any moment. I remained standing, my pendant recorder capturing everything. Well, Marcus prompted. What's this about, Mother? Patricia's perfectly manicured fingers twisted in her lap. I may have made some mistakes. What kind of mistakes? I asked, my voice deliberately gentle. She shot me a venomous look before turning to Marcus. The photos. They weren't exactly what they seemed. What do you mean? Marcus's face darkened. They were altered. The words seemed to physically pain her. I had someone edit them to make it look like Emma was being unfaithful. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at his mother, his face draining of color. You did what? He whispered. I was protecting you. Patricia burst out. She's not right for you, Marcus. She's too independent, too focused on her career. I just wanted. Stop. Marcus held up his hand. Just stop. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. Patricia gleefully describing to her friend how she orchestrated the whole plan, including helping Jessica pursue Marcus. There's more, I said quietly. Hours more. Every manipulation, every lie, every scheme, all recorded. Marcus listened, his expression growing more horrified with each revelation. When the recording ended, he turned to his mother. How could you? His voice cracked. You helped me destroy my marriage based on lies. I did it for you, Patricia insisted. And let's not pretend you're innocent in this. You were seeing Jessica long before I showed you those photos. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He slumped in his chair, the full weight of his choices finally sinking in. Emma, he started, turning to me. I don't know what to say. I do, I replied calmly. I want a divorce. A proper one, with fair division of assets. But we can fix this, he protested. Now that I know the truth is, you were willing to believe the worst about me. You moved in with another woman and tried to cheat me out of my share of our assets. Your mother's lies worked because you wanted them to. Patricia stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't? I can, I cut her off. And unless you want these recordings shared with everyone you know, you'll stop interfering. Both of you will. They left separately, Marcus to presumably face Jessica with the truth, Patricia to salvage what she could of her reputation. I stayed in the kitchen, feeling lighter than I had in months. The next few weeks brought significant changes. Marcus moved out permanently, this time with proper divorce proceedings in motion. Patricia disappeared to her sister's house in Florida, her influence finally neutralized. Jessica, upon learning the full story, ended things with Marcus. Apparently, a man who would believe fake photos over his wife wasn't quite the catch she thought. My lawyer called with updates. The evidence you gathered is impressive. We'll get a fair settlement. Thank you, I replied. But make sure everyone understands, I'm not looking for revenge. I just want what's rightfully mine. 6 months later, I sat on my newly purchased condo's balcony, watching the sunset. The divorce was finalized, the assets split fairly. Marcus had finally apologized, not that it changed anything. Patricia still wasn't speaking to me, which was honestly a relief. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Laura. Heard through the grapevine that Patricia's country club friends aren't too happy with her these days. Something about helping her son have an affair. I smiled but didn't respond. I'd never actually shared the recordings publicly. The threat had been enough. Sometimes the best victory is simply moving forward with dignity. The pendant recorder still sat in my jewelry box, a reminder that strength often comes in unexpected forms. I didn't need it anymore, but I kept it as a symbol of how far I'd come. My new life was just beginning, and this time, no one else was writing the story but me.